Hey, Sam, how are we up to? Bring a fidget. Oh, that's.
I always count on Doug and Sam to be my.
I didn't bring a fidget. I didn't bring a fidget. Okay. No, I would annoy you. Damn.
How's everyone?
Good, how are you?
Good, good.
Started.
Y'all ready?
Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to today's journal club. The research paper, the topic for today is risk factors for mismatches in the art laboratory. Okay. That's not gonna work. Okay. So the topic for today is risk factors for mismatches in the ART laboratory. So this is our agenda for today, just housekeeping items for our friends that are online. Feel free to unmute yourself and turn on your camera, and you can submit questions at any time during the presentation. Our host today is going to be Dr. Anderson. And I'm ready to get started.
Great. No, thank you, Erica. And I want to thank everybody for showing up. We usually have, there might have been some confusion with the scheduling today, but so thanks for everybody. I think we lost somebody, a good friend of mine, Kay, who was just on but now gone. But anyway, we're looking at risk factors for mismatches in the art laboratory. An analysis of 73,719 electronic witnessing points. What did everybody think of the paper?
I think the paper was, it was an easy read, and it was really good, and informative. And I have a question.
Of course, yeah, that's what we're here for. That was funny, by the way.
And I have a question.
No, that's great. It's a
If
good
all
paper.
mismatches and stuff are important, why is it important to separate the critical mismatches from other type of mismatches in the art lab?
That was good. I mean, they did, I mean, I looked at it like, you know, a critical mismatch, that's well, I would go back to, you know, kind of going back, like, I applaud these authors for writing a paper about mismatches and using their electronic witnessing. People who get electronic witnessing systems to prevent mismatches, right? So one of my biggest concerns in my career, like, was there any mistakes I didn't know about? And these guys actually were able to identify where they did things wrong, right? And but they did call it you know, the critical mismatches and you know, the not critical mismatches, but critical mismatches where there was actually biological material there, right? So fortunately, there were fewer of those, but could have been you left the sperm tube in your workstation, or you know, I would imagine that's the most common. Because we get it when we dig into the paper and we see where those mismatches were most common at. I think insemination was one of those areas. And so a tissue was actually there. So sperm being a tissue, embryos being a tissue. So did you leave your embryos out? So before I say too much, I'd like to know, like, what kind of take home messages did you guys get out of the paper?
I have another question.
Go ahead.
Oh, so everybody look at me. So I know at Shady Grove they had the it was like we gave the patient a white card, and every dish had to be scanned before they can proceed. So are we relying too much on that or still using each other? Because that's not eliminating mistakes from happening.
No, they probably had the very similar one, and Ellie was saying she uses Matcher at a consulting lab that she goes to. Matcher, they use an RFID tag.
Label.
The label, yeah, it's a label, but they scan an RFID tag. And, whereas not an R, no, it's not an RFID, it's a, QR code. It's a QR code, I'm sorry. Whereas witness is an RFID, radio frequency, label. And so I think there's others out there that might use barcode type systems as well. I think when they didn't say it at first when I was reading the abstract, but when they talked about radio frequency, I knew it was going to be witnessing. I didn't know if they were going to just kind of keep that secret, but you knew who it was, which one it was. But you're right, people they might rely on that more and not using the double witnessing. Any other comments? Particular? I know Brittany's got a lot of comments.
She's like this.
I'm at the edge.
About the students though, like, to give them a kind of your first stab at with some of the take home messages they got from it.
The biggest take home message I think was that, or the one that pointed out the most to me was that the most senior person had the highest mismatch rates. So like Daniel has mentioned before, when you're witnessing, you don't just trust like, oh, LA supervisor, so she probably got it, like, yeah, it's right. No, you actually like want to check because everybody is equally bound to make an error.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I actually always say I'm the most dangerous person in the lab. I have the most experience in the room, but also everybody wants a little piece of Tony throughout the day, right? So like nothing worse when I'm doing biopsies, I'll tap on the window, like, you got a minute?
And it does mention that.
No, I don't have a minute. I wouldn't be.
You do have to multitask and you are distracted because we have more responsibilities.
And I mentioned that in there, supervisories and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Right? I know Brittany had some comments on that as well. Like, do you want to add to that area?
Yeah,
Since we're talking about the staffing. area.
yeah, I would love to. Going back to where they're saying their typical hours are 8 to 4, which is pretty standard in an IVF lab. It also included a 20-minute break. And I simply just don't think 20 minutes is enough time to eat lunch and decompress and adjust your eyes to the real life and not under 40x. I actually looked up what an adequate break would be for being in a laboratory setting, and it said 2 15-minute breaks and a 30-minute lunch break, which I think is the minimum. And my question would be, like, I'm guilty of it, not taking a lunch. I know everyone here is guilty of not taking a lunch. And if you're only getting 20 minutes, why not just power through? It's a 20-minute break, or you can be done and potentially leave 20 minutes early. That if I'm contemplating that, I can't imagine being a member in this lab and how many times they contemplate that each day. So I guess my question is how many times does that rotation not make a full circle? And how many times is that person, maybe it's tech I or tech A, maybe they're skipping their breaks because they want to power through the day, because they don't want to be there till 5 or 6 o'clock. I simply just don't think 20 minutes is enough, and it could be adding on to fatigue and potentially burnout and more mistakes.
But the mismatch rates actually dropped after that 20-minute break.
Yeah.
Like the rates.
It shows how important a break is, right? So maybe they should have 4 20-minute breaks throughout the day, like every 2 hours, 20
I
minutes.
think it's better like more short breaks than just like 20-minute breaks. Like,
Yeah.
And most of the critical mismatches spiked after 4.
Well,
because
I mean, whether it spiked or didn't, having 20 minutes with doing the work that we do is not enough. I mean, like, think about our pilots, like flying our planes, we're in the same situation. Would you want to be on a plane where a pilot's been going full force 8 to 4 with only a 20-minute break? Like, it's just not, it's not safe. And
Great point.
I don't know,
that would make you take breaks.
that was my, as much as I don't like taking breaks.
You need to go.
I feel like a hypocrite saying those things. I do feel hypocritical saying those things, but also this paper was a big slice of humble pie, because it doesn't matter how many years of experience or how many reps you've done or how good your rates are. You could be the one adding to the most mistakes. So.
Yeah, I would, here at the academy, we give 3 safety lessons, 1, just the regular infectious disease, OSHA, noise levels, ergonomics, that kind of stuff. That's just standard proper use of gloves, right? PPE. Then we give liquid nitrogen safety. But I think the most important one we give is the patient safety. And I use the analogy, like you say in the pilot, like every time a plane takes off and lands, those are the most critical points. And so, there's a reason why when you're on the plane and you're less below 10,000 feet, they say to turn all your music off, all your pay attention. They're given the safety briefing. If you've flown more than 3 times, you could probably give the safety briefing yourself. But so everybody ignores those things. But in all reality, you should know where your exit is. And so you should know in the event, because the idea is like below 10,000 feet, if the plane's going to crash, they really need you to be paying attention. And so I always say every time we open an incubator door, the plane's taken off. And every time whenever you go to close that incubator door, when you're putting the dish away, the plane is landing. So between takeoff and landing, you shouldn't be talking to anybody. We see this all the time. I loved it when we would do retrievals and at a center I was working at, and we'd be talking about the Game of Thrones. Is that the movie, the show, the Game of Thrones? Like the latest episode that was on Wednesday night. And so like we should be focusing on the retrieval, not the show we were watching or the latest episode of Survivor or something.
Well, yeah, I remember you saying to me, like, don't ever rush coming in the lab, like never rush, even if you're running late coming into lab. That's mostly the mistakes happen when you're rushed. You were late, you got caught in the traffic, you walk in the lab and you want to get it done, right? That's where mistakes are going to happen because you are rushed.
Yeah. Yeah, every mistake I've ever seen is when somebody is late and they're late to the lab and they're rushing around and like, oh, I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm like, just calm down.
Calm down, take a minute. If everything's fine, take deep breaths, let's go.
It's still gonna be there. Work is still gonna be there. And this is really a high risk area. Like those embryos are our passengers. We're the pilot. There's pilot A, B, C, D, E, all the way around the room. You're the pilot. And so, when you're doing something really especially critical where, like biopsy, right? They didn't really talk about biopsy in general here because to me, that's they broke down, say, insemination, oocyte denudation. But I bet you at each one of those points, there's at least 3 or 4 checkpoints in there.
Well, because biopsy, they know they have to be concentrated. There was less mistakes happening because they took more time when doing biopsy. So most of the mistakes happen during denuding and transfers and,
The simpler procedures.
But when it came to biopsy and ICSI, it was more because they were more concentrated, sitting down, like they had the space to work.
Saying that they shared the spaces where they did the denuding. So when they were doing those procedures, they had discard dishes or whatever materials that had IDs. So that was being left behind because that was just trash. And it was being picked up as a mismatch, even though it wasn't a CMM because it didn't have any biological goods in it, but it gets flagged.
Which is huge. Like,
Yeah.
let's talk about lab etiquette 101, turning off your microscopes and wiping down your station. If you're doing that after every procedure, those mismatches should go down. I mean, I know Tony tells a scary story about, a follicular fluid tube being left behind from a previous retrieval. A lot of times when we have retrievals, our retrievals are Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that's one after another, right? When we're super busy. I think in Houston, we had 7 yesterday. I hope every single person that went through a retrieval checked to make sure that follicular fluid from the previous retrieval was gone. So it's about cleaning up your stations and, making sure that you're not getting away from those things because then it can freak you out. If you leave sperm from the previous 60 and you grab your next eggs and sperm out, you're gonna get the heebie-jeebies, or at least you should, from seeing 2 different last names and 2 different settings of sperm. So
Also check the OR tubes when it's empty. Not just your station.
Yeah, you had a good example earlier, like in the sense of it's impossible for us to leave a specimen cup or 2 behind in our sperm prep because everything goes to the post analytics area. Like even the Zymo prep dish, even the gradient tube, or even the swim up tube, whatever method we're doing, it goes with the cup. It's not like we're leaving it in the area and then it's all discarded later the next day after. Like it's part of our compliance to save that material overnight. But a lot of people just save the swim up tube or the post prep tube. But we move it all at the same time, and it's setting up processes so you don't make those mistakes.
Right, and let's just say that we had the wrong tube, but we grabbed it from this rack with the cup and the sperm wash and the Zymo. We can go into that cup and start again. If we ever question, that sample, the fact that we keep that specimen cup, and that is the start of the chain of custody, like you can always trace back as to where you found the mistake. But, and with the way we have things, because we have to bring all of our evidence into the post-analytical area, it's hard to leave that specimen cup behind with bringing in a new one. Like,
Yeah.
you would be breaking the lab law that way.
Oh, I thought that was interesting that the paper says, sorry, it talks about how different labs, how they're set up and how the process works kind of affects how you have those mismatches and where you get those mismatches. So for example, at Positive, it's like, we're pretty good about how the system works, especially with the sperm having the pre-analytical, post-analytical, and the analytical. Like your setup kind of depends on where your biggest risks are, right? So it'd be interesting to see how this lab where they did this study, what is their setup like? What's their step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of thing? Like
Well, yeah,
what are
it's a good
ways
opportunity.
that even now, even though we think our system's good, like what are ways to minimize it? Like especially once we do implement the RFID system, like where can we, patch the
Yeah.
patch the holes in our process?
Yeah, it gives you, it's an opportunity, which is really what I really like about them presenting this data is that it allows you to beef up your quality management plan. Like, hey, here's where we have weaknesses. We need to put systems in place like we have done with the, like with the sperm prep. But, even just the other day, yesterday when I was doing ICSI, I was getting ready to start another case, but I'd left the sperm in the same area. Like that would have been a mismatch in this scenario. If I had put the other sperm in there, but I noticed that immediately before I put the sample in there and I rectified the issue, right? So I would have caught that ahead of time, but you're right. It takes good lab, etiquette or just good, being a laboratory professional in the sense cleaning your space up between cases.
Yeah, and getting a habit of doing that since the beginning, because bad habits are hard to break. So,
But do they have the individual technicians in here? And ironically, they were the most years advanced, years of experience.
because you get comfortable. Huh?
And so, so you get,
I think
get
Kay has a
comfortable.
question.
Question.
Oh, hey, Kay, you came back. I'm so glad you came back.
Hey, Tony, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hey, thanks for doing this. This is awesome stuff. I just have one quick question that I've always wondered about, and in my lab we do this, but especially with an ICSI case, why keep the sperm overnight? Why not just discard it as soon as your case is done, and that way it's not hanging around and to me, anything hanging around in the lab unnecessarily is a risk. So, I mean, I'm just curious what everybody thinks about that.
I personally agree. I don't know why we keep it. The only reason why we keep it is because it's a checklist question on the CAP checklist. And honestly, I do use Joint Commission now. I don't know if it's one of their questions. So I have no idea why. In fact, when I'm teaching people, they say, "Why do we keep it overnight?" And I'm like, I really don't know. Perhaps if you're going to do a re-ensam or a rescue ICSI, or you just wanted to know if it was contaminated, you could go and culture it. But yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, when I was in Dr. Poole's lab, the reason why we kept it was if we saw contamination after conventional insemination, we wanted to see where that contamination came from, whether that was the media or the sperm sample itself. So that's the only time I remember going back and looking at that sperm sample to see if something had grown overnight.
I
Yeah,
gotta
we see
say,
things.
35 years of doing this, I have never gone back. And when we were saving it, I've never gone back and looked at it. And rescue ICSI, we're all ICSI now, so we don't really do rescue ICSI. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I don't know. To me, it's kind of like the tube left over in the tube warmer kind of nerve point. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I totally agree, Kay. Yeah, I appreciate you, you, you chiming in and giving us that input. That's really good. I know that, because I don't know if it's because we had a scheduling error. We usually get 20 or 30 people on this call, but, and I know you and I worked together a long time, but, one of the things I want to do is, I had some poll questions instead of doing the poll because there's not many people, but have you ever had a critical mismatch that you would like to share, Kay?
a critical mismatch.
Just any kind of thing that you would say, like, just the idea with the students here is that they learn from our mistakes, so to speak. And
Are you talking
just know
about?
we're all friends. Well, no, this is being recorded and will be posted. So if you don't want to share something that for the world to see, then I would give you that caution.
Um, none come to mind, but one thing I will say, freezing embryos, even with the witnessing system, still kind of gives me a pause every now and then, because when you're freezing multiple embryos, how easy would it be to pick up the wrong cryotop and swap them out? So that's one thing that I always worry about. I've not seen a mismatch, thank goodness, but um, the best system has flaws, right? So um, I think a double check at every point that you can is always great. The systems are great, but I think most and foremost is just being present and just giving yourself kind of that extra beat to just reevaluate. Just step back and look at your bench and say, all right, I got these eggs, I got this sperm. And another thing I would mention is ICSI needles, like ICSI and biopsy needles. I always line up my little containers that they come out of. So I know at the end of the day, I used a different set for every patient, because it would be so easy on a busy day to miss that ICSI needle switch. And
That's
I
a really
have,
great idea.
yeah, I mean, it's just, little nuggets of kind of, to grab your attention and your memory. So,
That's a really great idea. I've never done that, but that's a great idea.
and I also on my sheets in days past, I've had like a check mark of ICSI needle change, and you force yourself to document it, so you do it.
Yeah. No, I've never done that. Actually, something about those tubes laying around always freaks me out. I throw them away right away, but that I might actually change that because I guess one of the things this kind of brings to my attention is that there's probably the errors like one of my biggest fears is that, like you, like 35 years of doing this, no one ever showed up to work and said, boy, I sure hope I screw it up today. I mean, not a single person ever. Um, and, uh, and so I've always been like, is there any, uh, if I ever made a mistake I didn't know about, right?
Right.
And so those are things that worry me, with or without a witnessing. And just like you said, like, I used to use IVF Witness, and, it's just an RFID tag that has no label on it until you give it the label. So if you put Jane Doe on there and label it, Samantha Smith, it's forever gonna be Samantha Smith, even though it says Jane Doe. And so when you go to freeze those embryos and thaw those embryos, it's gonna think it's, Samantha Smith, not Jane Doe. And maybe that's where you'd catch it, but that's what worries me about RFID. I think Matcher is like, once you have all those QR codes, like, it's not gonna change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So have you ever used a witnessing system, Kay?
I've used Matcher, I've used RI Witness, and here at Pinnacle, we have our own internal one that we've developed. And they're a nice tool, but I don't feel like it's 100%. You know,
That's what I got from this paper. Just because you have an RI witness, you still have
Yeah, you
to,
should still do the double
you
witnessing.
still should be doing the double witness.
Question.
and
So, like,
document.
So for you, that maybe like someone who has more authority in the lab, if the whole paper kind of gave away that it isn't really the witnessing tool that's helpful, but the way that they handle like workflow and staffing, how often do you get together with the team and think like what do we need to change? Like how do we need to improve? Is it just when there's an error that occurs, or is it like like a weekly or monthly thing where you're assessing like how can we improve the way that we have our system designed? Like how often do you think about these things?
Well, that's one of my questions was, it talks about in here, like workload and the stress levels. And so one of my questions, my survey questions today was, for anybody out in the audience, and maybe Kay can, since she's the one in, most, it would, when there's been errors, is it because of workload or is it because of the dysfunctions in the laboratory? So when people are making mistakes, is it because the workload was really high and they just couldn't handle it? Or is it because the laboratory had a lot of dysfunctions in leadership and a lot of like stirring the pot and not people getting along. And so there really was no trust in the lab. And so people tend to make more mistakes when those kinds of environments are around. And you hear that a lot about laboratories. And for me, like I actually work less now than I did 30 years ago because I buy my media, I buy my pipettes, I buy everything. I used to literally have to make my own water to make the media and weigh out the salts. And like it took hours and hours to do that kind of work. And then I had to do IVF. And so it actually is, IVF is actually easier today than it was, 20, 30 years ago.
And going to your question, I think that's when we could use the system to help us
Right.
to see where are we getting those mismatches and say, what can we do better on this area?
But it seems like it's very helpful while you're actively working on a case, because it said that what's it called, like the RFID doesn't even work well with liquid nitrogen. So you still need to make sure that you have a good foundation without that witnessing system. So
Absolutely.
it's kind of just like an extra tool to use and something that gives your lab more credibility towards the patient because they feel like, oh, like they're being more vigilant about
Yeah, it's like a double layer.
my stuff. Yeah, so they feel more comfortable going to your lab as opposed to a different one because you have like that backup.
Yeah.
I would say that the witnessing system is just as essential as your colored tape. It holds the same weight. It's just another layer in that Swiss cheese.
It is not a replacement.
It is not a crutch, no,
It's
it's
another
just a
layer of Swiss cheese.
That's-
With the Swiss cheese, you
Yeah.
get through one hole, there's something, it's just another layer.
Yeah,
So, I mean, you gotta really be asleep at the wheel if you miss the color, the name, the session number, the date of birth, and the witnessing. Like, if you mess it up, you kind of deserve to lose your job, I guess, at that point. And not that and the idea is like, not that anybody does make a mistake that when they do, it's not that you're gonna be punished for. You need to have an environment where you're not gonna be punished for reporting an error that you, or near miss. I was fortunate enough to get to go to University of, the University Hospital in Cleveland after the tank incident. And, which is widely published on, everything you needed to know is on the internet about that. And I actually applaud them for their transparency that they had with that because Pacific Fertility Center had an error that you can't find anything about. And I used to work for the company that where Pacific Fertility was at, and there was, even between lab directors, there was no discussion about it. And so we really didn't learn from that incident, but we learned a lot from the University Hospital incident. And they really, they were very transparent. And I think it actually changed a lot of things in the field. Now we have Boreas for tank weight, we have, or is it the Craft Sentinel for temperature? We have Farmer Watch doing level sensors. We have a lot of new things that came out of that. And so sometimes it takes some of these cases and people reporting them to allow us to push the technology forward. One of the things I did just kind of, we haven't really mentioned is that it didn't really matter what day of the week they were doing, or holidays, right, or weekends or holidays, which I thought was interesting because it was one of the things that we do here is, we do our retrievals Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They mentioned they do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which was really kind of interesting. So what they're saying is none of the clinical team is ever working a weekend, but embryology is working every weekend because every Monday is a retrieval, which puts day 5 and day 6 every Saturday and Sunday. We purposely try to do our cases on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but we alternate weeks. And we kind of get that from the Toyota production system kind of ideas. Like if you're going to be making car doors this week, and then we're going to be making bumpers next week, that if you tried to make bumpers and car doors the same day, very much like doing retrievals and biopsy the same day, then you have to change you have to change the equipment out. So, and as Kay was saying, like you have your ICSI tools and then you have biopsy tools, you have to make sure everything lines up. One of the things I do is I save my dishes because there's been times when, my embryos didn't reconcile and I go back to my dish and I'm like, oh, there it is. I'm like, oh man, I didn't freeze that embryo. But, that's why I go back and I can go back and catch those. But, so we do this on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so that this week is all like retrieving eggs and doing ICSI. Then the next week is nothing but, biopsy and freezing. It's very methodical. We know that our slow days are Mondays and Tuesdays, where we can, on retrieval week, we can do all our frozen embryo transfers those days. Then we also do our, on the following week, Thursdays and Fridays, we can do our FET. So within the clinical team and the laboratory team, I'm not going to say we don't ever work weekends, but we do have minimal weekend work with, on an occasion, we do have a Tuesday retrieval, which brings us in on a Sunday. But it allows us to really always stay fresh. I personally think that that's helpful. And I'd rather do 40 retrievals in a week and do 20 every week. And, and every week I'm doing retrievals, ICSI, biopsy, freezing, thawing, transfers, and there's just a lot to do. It requires more people to work at that capacity. You're going to have fatigue.
Yeah.
This way,
Yeah.
None of that, but from the ordering standpoint, it's nice. Because from the ordering standpoint, if we have, 40 retrievals, like it gives me a time to work through all my vet media, but still have a whole week to get more vet media.
Oh, that's a great point.
Or like things that are on back order, which like TB syringes, if anybody's ordering those, they're like, we need those to dissect cumulus, like those are on back order. But it gives me a whole week to find a vendor that's gonna sell us some TB syringes before our next batch of retrievals. So it's nice. I hope we never get rid of it.
It's up to me, we won't. But no, I'd say it. And so, something else that they talked about is the timing of the day. Like there were more errors at the 12 to 2 and after 4. And there's a really good book I read years ago. I actually read it or listen to it probably once a year, and it's called The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Duboli, I think is his name. And it talks about lots of different things. But one of the things that really resonates with me in the sense of when it comes to IVF, we get decision fatigue. So we're fresh in the morning. And so as laboratory professionals, we should be kind of thinking about, the nice thing is we all wear scrubs, so we don't have to think about what we're going to wear. As simple and mundane as that is, we are going to wear the same thing every day. And but maybe even thinking about what am I having for lunch? What am I having for breakfast? How are you going to work plan your day ahead of time so that you don't have to make those decisions. It's just the same. People kind of make fun of laboratory people because we're like robots, but the reason why we're that way is because we live in such a very, fine-tuned environment, error-free environment.
I gotta say, that's the most common question. What are we gonna have today for lunch? Every morning.
Also, to going back on these times, like, I think it's great, but I also wonder if it's slower in the morning because less procedures are happening, and right around midday is when you're smacking ICSI out and doing biopsy, and now your day fives are finally ready, and you don't want to wait till past noon. Like, I just wonder if this is correlating more with like the workflow in the lab and less about, oh, I'm hungry, or oh, I just ate. Like, I think our busiest time is 12 to 2 in the
Yeah.
lab, typically. I mean, I think our procedures from 8 to 12, I think is more just retrieving eggs. So how much, like,
In the morning, you're just retrieving eggs, right?
Yeah.
Then in the afternoon, around noontime, you're starting to hyaluronidase, you're
you're
doing.
doing your
That's why you need to take a
transfers.
break
Get
before
ready
you
for
start
ICSI.
mixing.
But we talked about that earlier, like we should build some breaks
Yeah.
into this for sure. Just be fresh. And then what I was saying though is that you get this decision fatigue. And so, if you see that happening, take a break. That's a good indicator. You need to take a break. I love my watch because if I've been sitting too long, it tells me like, hey, you should get up and move. And it's a good idea.
Yeah.
You have to turn the sound off so that when the Lord calls,
Yeah, there we
you
go.
have to wait till you got time. Wait till I finish the biopsy.
I had a question about figure 4. It's the graph with it's the individual people, the end group of 20. And so there's quite a few people. So for example, PQR, oh, I guess it's just PQ and R. But like, so are they considering critical mismatches, like also normal mismatches? Like, like the idea a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. Like, are they like double counting them or no?
These are equivalent.
No, I think that's a good point, Doug. And I don't know that they really addressed that, but they had just as many critical mismatches as just non-critical mismatches. And so, like, again, I think this is where witnessing, having this level of detail, that maybe it's an opportunity to talk to those, PQ and R as well. Like, you have the highest number of critical mismatches of anybody in the lab. And the critical mismatch, meaning you left a biological sample in the space and then brought another biological sample in there. And so that's a pretty bad thing to happen. The nice thing is, I think someone pointed out, was that there was no mismatches that actually occurred in a wrong pregnancy or something like that. But when you get to where those 3 or 4 people have the highest levels in the lab, that they should probably be monitored. And that's where competency evaluations are really like, what is going on with those people that the others aren't doing? 20 people, that's a lot of people in the lab to be managing.
It's also something I can't.
Is that like the number of cases? So like for L, N is 842, and then for M, it's 4,233, and they're just about the same for the mismatches. So it's not considering the ratio, even though it's considering overall mismatches.
Yeah.
So
It might have been a percentage though. I think on the side it is an actual a percentage of those cases. So that's a really good point.
I was looking for what the key of N was.
Yeah, nice you can zoom up on. I'm sitting here with my 57-year-old eye. Even with my progressive, it's hard to read. But no, that's a really great point, and I don't have a good answer for you on that. But I think those are good points to like. In fact, we're putting witness into our lab here soon, and so it'll be a great way to do this. And again, I go back. I applaud these guys for writing this paper. It opened my eyes to like, it's not perfect, but it's but it does help point out some points where you can actually improve your quality system.
I hope I hope that when we have these systems in place, like hopefully in every single lab, right? Like, I hope that lab directors also look at the excessive dish making and the points of contact to the, where those dishes can, like, those mistakes can occur. Like, I think about how many dishes I like used to make compared to what I make now, and I just, the thing that sticks out to me the most is A, the blast development, it's a lot better, but B, like, I don't have to worry about mixing up dishes because I'm not touching them nearly as much as the way, how much I used to touch them.
Yeah.
So I feel like for me, it's like almost more safe because those chances of me making a mistake are now minimized significantly.
No, I actually, you had a statistic from your fertility center days. Didn't you guys count up the number of touch points that there are in a cycle?
Yeah,
What was that number?
there was like, I think over 4,000. 4,000 points from when somebody starts their IVF cycle to when somebody ends it.
4,000?
4,000,
That's a lot.
yeah,
I was-
compared to different
I was gonna
combinations.
Say like 200 or 300.
Oh, because we did 2 PN transfers, day 3 transfers.
For each embryo
for
was a
each
touch.
embryo,
Oh,
yeah.
wow, very simple.
PICSI, meaning only 5 ICSI and the rest conventional, like.
No, that's one of your point of that is that, and just to kind of for UK, we actually there's some things we've done here in San Antonio, like we actually use one dish for the whole case. We actually retrieve in a dish, we hyaluronidase in that dish, and post ICSI, put it back in that dish, and we leave it in that dish all the way to day 6. We never change into another dish. And we're using dry incubators. We're using a Miri incubator that's dry. And so the point of it is that every time you take off and land, where there's fewer of those points, so there's less risk for error. So there's less risk for these non-mismatches, or even like the critical mismatch, because if if you left a sperm in the dish, we're never moving from day 3 into a new dish. That is potential mislabeling that dish. So we've even done some things where we've experimented using the Protex dish, where the Protex cup, where the sperm never leaves the cup. That actually we drop that Novasort barrel in there, add the media, and we actually pull right off of that media into our ICSI dish, and that actually worked pretty good. We felt like there might have been a little bit of seminal fluids, but so there's ways to minimize those things, to limit the steps where you're going to have fewer critical mismatches and things like that. So yeah, if you're using it correctly, you would find ways to reduce those spaces.
Also too, like,
Great point.
we talked about convention or continuous media and sequential media last journal club.
Yeah.
Like, that's also less touch points that you have between moving gametes into another dish if you use the continuous media.
They mentioned that here, like there was really no changes except we changed into a continuous culture media. Like, well, that's a huge step.
That's a huge.
That's like you probably just cut out 50% of one of these areas. So actually, it's embryo culture, which had the lowest rate of mismatch, right?
Probably because they switch.
So they switched.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah. All right. Well, we're coming up on the very end. Oh,
I was gonna say, do you think they're like scheduling too many procedures for one day? With the amount of embryologists that there is? Because I remember you had a table that said if you have this many cycles, you should be having this many embryologists. Do you think maybe like there should be more embryologists than what was on that table?
yeah, good point. Depending on how, because it does look like they try to set all their retrievals on certain days. So maybe some days they need more than other days. And that's the thing with this business, is that it's not like you can just, well, there's still 3 cases we didn't do ICSI on, but it's 4:00 and it's time to go home. So we're just going to do those tomorrow. It's not like most businesses. You can just like, hang up your lab coat, walk out the door and come back and finish today's work tomorrow. You have to finish today's work today. And that's where at the end of the day, you probably, there's more risk of errors. Like I said, knowing that about yourself, or not just you, but humans in general, just be aware of that.
Not only that, but this setting in the semen appointments, they said that the preparations and semen analysis are scheduled one after another without overlapping. Like that's as good as you can get it. Because I mean, every center that I've been in, we've overlapped to some degree on some day. But then when this happened, everything had their own slot of appointments and they still saw these mistakes.
Yeah, that's how it was where I was working at too. And I did have some mismatches sometimes.
Yeah.
Just because we didn't wipe down after every procedure.
It's okay. It's
okay. Thank you for sharing that, actually. That's good.
Yeah, so sometimes I would.
You don't have to say where it was.
Okay. I would get a sample and I had forgot to remove my endpoint and I would put the cup, the RNA witness would beep at me.
Yeah,
The question is, did you learn from that?
I did.
You learn from that and after you do that, you're like, oh, I'm not using good lab etiquette. But I'm gonna go with embryologist A, D, and I just couldn't seem to get the message on that. So they just continued to make the same mistakes. So,
I was wondering, cause it does say that, the highest mismatches was like the transfers and the denudation process. Because the empty dishes of the previous patient were left behind, but I can visually remember thinking the last time I saw Brittany do a transfer, she was like cleaning everything and like going back and checking everything and just looking to make sure everything was clear. So I was like, why don't they implement that if it's something so easy to, it feels like the most, I don't know, preliminary thing to have a good habit of clearing his workstation. Next person.
I thought you were gonna say something. I was like, what did I do?
No, I remember thinking she's really serious about clearing everything. Because I don't know if you were doing the next one, but if they're doing this research that's all gonna go on, how much mismatching are you doing? Why are they overlooking cleaning up your station when it's the first thing that you should think about?
that's a good point. And maybe it's not you that has bad, if you're bringing in a sample, maybe it's a person before you who didn't do their job.
Yeah, because if you leave something, the next person is bound to grab it thinking they placed it there.
Well, I mean, I'm so glad for you that in the sense that you share that, because you're getting to see how it's supposed to be done in the right way and not.
I can't see how they overlook
So you can
it.
carry that forward in wherever you go in your employment.
Yeah, when you
Yeah, but
have
I
like a
think that
clean
also comes with
station.
practice, because I feel like, for example, if you see a dish in a working bench and it's not your dish, you didn't put it there. It's always a good habit to check what's inside of that dish. Inside of that dish, if is it empty? Is there oocytes there? And if there's oocytes there, who left them here? What were you doing? What were the next steps? Are these immature eggs, or why are they here, and why is this dish not or discarded or placed in an incubator? Because that used to happen a lot with my lab director in my last lab. As you said, Tony, the person that has the most experience is probably the most dangerous inside of the lab, because we would always be kind of cleaning after him. What he said, okay, I'm done, but he wouldn't clean after him. We would always be checking, double checking. Were you using this stripper? Was this your plate? So it's always a good habit to have. Just if you see something and there's no one around, start investigating. Why is this here? Instead of just getting there and clearing or cleaning out stuff, first track back to where and who was taking charge of those dishes, and then after that, then you can clean.
Yeah, that's a great point in the sense. Also, if you are the lab director or the lab supervisor, you need to get down in the trenches with your team know what it is they're going through. That's why I never want to not work in the laboratory. I want to always have a hand there to do that. It keeps my skills fresh, but also, keeps me accountable. And so, and that's where I need my team to hold me accountable. So if you work in an environment of trust, we call it, in fact, in the newsletter this week, I talked about the circle of trust. And if you work in an area where there's a circle of trust, then you're going to have each other's back. And on an airplane, the flight attendant has every power to stop the flight from taking off if things aren't properly done. And if you're just a terrible, patron on the plane, that person has the ability to have you kicked off the plane. There's always, I think in a book, Checklist Manifesto, it talks about that in healthcare, like where we make errors, that we need to, everybody in the OR has the opportunity to stop a case. Everybody has the equal power. Typically in the days of old, it was the doctor had the power. But in all honesty, I should have the least amount of power, even though I'm the lab director. The most junior person should feel the same comfort in calling me out on my mistakes as the senior person. And that's a good work environment. So if a lab director isn't doing that, they need to.
I feel also, because we had this situation yesterday, I feel like the lab, they should have always a capability to adapt in circumstances, but also that can increase the chances of making a mistake. For example, taking decisions at the last minute, like maybe you have a schedule for something in the day and then somebody else made a switch in that schedule. So now you have to move around it to kind of meet all of everything that needs to be done. So I think from yesterday, I learned that you can tell people okay, no, wait, let me finish this first and then we can go with you. I'm not gonna be running around. I need to do this first, finish this task and hand it over to the person that can take over it before I can go back and do what it was scheduled for me to do before.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, Sam. I know that, that happens a lot where the second transfer is not here. Can we do the third transfer first and then do the second transfer? And I want the answer to always be no. Because in our mental, even when we went to bed last night, we have actually a mental list of what we're doing tomorrow after the 3 retrievals and the 5 transfers and the order they're going, because we thought them in that order and everything is in an order. If you switch it around, that's when mistakes will happen, with or without a witnessing system. So yeah, you just need to follow your systems and never change those things.
I don't know what made me think of this, but I wish there was something I'm sure all of us have seen cryo locks being left in the liquid nitrogen before you dump it out, right? Even in the training, y'all are learning VIT this week. I'm sure you've seen some cryo locks in the canister and they are in your bucket and you don't even know if that's yours or somebody else's. That's happened in real IVF labs. We've dumped it out and then we're like, holy crap, there's a cryo lock there. But there's not an RFID tag for that, It's nothing can't scan out your bucket to make sure it's empty. So it just makes you think about this gives me the heebie-jeebies, but that situation that no one's even thinking of, which is a pretty common mistake that you will see, we haven't even thought about what we can do for that,
Yeah. Well, I know we're coming up to the end of our time. One of the things I wish there was a way to do this, and if anybody has any ideas ever, to reach out to me, because, and I always use the airline industry as an example. But if you were to keep your license as a pilot and you have a near miss, it's not like a malfunction in your equipment, like the landing gear didn't go down. But if you have a near miss, like I almost ran into another airplane, and you don't report that to the FAA, you will lose your license. And that, as embryologists, I wish there was a way we could report things And that there's a way as an organization, like a national fertility safety board, so to speak, and that we could as a group help solve some of these problems. Because I think a lot of things really just don't go reported. So for last time, I appreciate these authors writing this paper. So I'm going to turn it over to Erica and talk about our next paper.
Yes, so I am getting ready to share it on the chat. So creating the share link in 2 seconds. It froze.
Thank you, Kate, for being here today. Really good to
My
see you
pleasure.
again.
My pleasure.
Perfect. So up next, our next journal club is going to be Thursday, June 19th from 12 to 1 p.m. And the topic is fast and furious pregnancy outcome with one-step rehydration and the warming protocol for human blastocysts. Yes, so I am sharing in the chat. I am sharing, yes, the document in the chat. That way everybody has it.
Oh, we have the upcoming classes. If you sign up today, Kay, you can get 25% off.
Wow,
If you want to learn what happens when you leave your cryo lock in the box, well, this is where you come to make mistakes. And like Planet Fitness, it's the judgment-free zone.
Oh, I can come out and hang out with you?
I would love that. I would love to see you.
I would love that too, and I'll bring my telephone book.
So, okay, yeah, so, when Kay and I worked together in North Carolina, I would tease her because she's like 6 foot tall and be like, can you clean the top of this hood over here? And she put a telephone book in the, Charlotte telephone books like this. You know what a telephone book is?
Yeah.
The yellow pages will be about this thick and like she put it in the chair so I could see through the scope. Good time, sister.
It was. Get a trip to HR now if you do that.
Right. Well, take care of yourself. See you soon.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. I couldn't do this. This wouldn't be as much fun.